Doug, come on up. Let's talk about the Gazette and where we're going from here. Give Doug a big hand.
Thanks, Alan. I want to recognize a few people in the audience. My buddy Ken Chase back there, who's on the Sulphur Springs School Board. Now, you know when Ken won his seat, how long ago was it? He beat an incumbent, right? Michael Hogan, that had been there forever. So when I first met Ken at the Elks Lodge, right, I told him, I didn't vote for you, dude. But ever since then, he's been buying me beer at the Elks. So I'm voting for him next time, Kenny. I also want to recognize our editor back there with her husband Keith. Martha Michael is the editor of the Gazette. Now, you have to know this. I don't know if any of you ever read my column. It's called Doug's Rant. But Martha is way on the other side politically than I am. But she has to edit that column every single week. And she grinds her teeth, and she sweats, and she swears, but she does it very dutifully. Thank you. I got to tell you a quick story because how many of you know Canyon Country Magazine? That's our other publication. We started it in 2006. So we put one issue out, and this lady walked into our office and said, I want to be your editor of that magazine. I think it's really cool. Canyon Country needs something like this, and I want to do that. I said, okay. So we hired her, and we got to talking a few days later, and we were told we were moving. And she goes, oh, where are you moving? I said, over to Clear Lake Drive off of Live Oak Springs. She said, that's where I live. I said, oh. She gave me her address. She lives right across the street from us. So ever since then, I've had this employee that hates my politics, disagrees with me all the time, and she lives right across the street. And besides that, my wife, who runs the company with me, and her have become best friends, so I get ganged up on all the time. Anyway, then there's Alan Ferdman. When I first, because I've always been more interested in national politics than the local stuff. And, I don't know how many years ago, 7, 8 years ago, I started hearing this name. Alan Ferdman. And I'd hear it again, and I'd hear it again. And I go, who is this guy? And somebody said, he's a pain in the city's ass. That's who he is. So I had this real negative connotation of him. I go, he must be a jerk. I didn't know. But then, lo and behold, the Elks Lodge brings people together. And started to get to know him at the Elks. And he started buying me beer, so now I liked him too. But now I consider him and Pam dear friends of Jeannie, my wife, and I. So I got to tell you a Canyon Country story because that's what it's about, right? I was born and raised in Tucson, Arizona. Tucson is all Tucson, right? So you either live in South Tucson, North Tucson, middle, right? I lived in the central. I grew up 2 miles away from the University of Arizona campus. Then I got married. We moved to Phoenix, lived there for 10 years. It's all Phoenix. I lived in north central Phoenix, right? So then I got a job offer. I was working for USA Today newspaper for about 10 years. I was in charge of marketing and distribution for Arizona and New Mexico. And Gannett, which is the largest media corporation in the country, started getting accused of being not gender balanced. Not enough women in upper management. I had hired this lady. I trained her. She worked for me for 2 or 3 years. They promoted her over me and wanted me to report to her. So my buddy, who had worked for me at USA Today, was now the marketing or one of the uppy-ups in Recycler Classifieds. Anybody remember that magazine? It's a huge recycler magazine that went all over SoCal. He calls me up and he says, Doug, I need you. I want to hire you away from that pit. And he said, I need you to come here. And I said, my wife will never, ever move to L.A. He said, because we had 3 little kids at the time. And he goes, hey, it's not L.A. I found this place called Santa Clarita. And it's really cool. And we're going to fly you over here and you can check it out. I said, okay. So long story short, I get the job. I take the job. We come here to look for houses. And I thought it was all Santa Clarita, right? So we looked at houses. Now that I know they were in Valencia and up in Saugus and all over. But the one I liked the best was in Canyon Country on Sierra Hills, in Sierra Hills. And it was on Bainbury Street. So we move, get started in life, and you just get to know people. And they go, oh, I just moved here from Arizona. Oh, where do you live? Canyon Country. Oh. You could see it in their face. I'll never forget this. One time this guy said, oh, where'd you move to from Phoenix? I said, Canyon Country. And he goes, Why? And I didn't know. I soon came to find out, though. And I says, well, what's so bad about Canyon Country? And he goes, I got 2 words for you. I go, what? He said, Sierra Highway. Have you been on it yet? I go, yeah. And he goes, there you go. So anyway. So to try to speed up here, I got the job at the Recycler Classifieds for 2 years, and we found out a large company was going to buy them, the same corporation that owned the LA Times. So my wife and I and the guy that hired me to come over here, we wanted to start a magazine here in Santa Clarita. Because when we moved here, my wife was looking for a second refrigerator. She looked in the Signal. No offense, Chuck. You weren't there then. And you couldn't find anything. And the only refrigerator she found was somewhere in Van Nuys, and I wasn't going to let her drive down to Van Nuys to some stranger's house to look at the second refrigerator. She said, why don't they have anything here in Santa Clarita like the Recycler? And I said, aha. So me and my friend, we took SBA loans out on our house. That wasn't stressful at all. And the 3 of us started in 1998 Santa Clarita Free Classifieds. We did very well in the early 2000s until about 2008. Recession, Craigslist, Internet, eBay, they killed us revenue-wise. So around 2011, and let me back up. In 2010, I bought my partner out, so then it was my wife and I running it, along, of course, with Martha helping us a great deal. I could hardly pay her anything. Her husband will tell you I still don't. But that's his opinion. We said, we have to do something or we're going to go out of business. So I'd always been a news guy, a news junkie, and I said, we're going to have to add news. So in Phoenix, I had worked for a paper called the Phoenix Gazette. So I said, we're going to change the name of the Santa Clarita Free Classifieds to the Santa Clarita Gazette and Free Classifieds. Okay? And start news. We didn't know what the heck we were doing. And Martha wasn't that thrilled about it because she knew she'd have to work more. And I wanted her to be the head writer, and she said, no way am I going to do that. She says, I hate hard news. So we just started publishing news. And we weren't very good at it at first. And then I remember once, I don't know what it was, but something really irritated me in the news. I was probably listening to Rush Limbaugh or watching Sean Hannity or, Bill O'Reilly. And I decided I'd just write it down and put it in the paper. What the heck? So I wrote it, and I didn't even call it Doug's Rant back then. I think I called it Doug's List or something. And I wrote it a couple times, and then I got tired of it and I didn't do it. And then I started getting phone calls, or I'd run into people. What happened to that stuff you're writing? You go, it's too much work. Every week you got to sit down and figure out what to write. So I started writing it, changed it to Doug's Rant, and it just kind of took off on its own. And I'm still, it's nothing about me, but I'll be in the Vons or at Food for Less, and somebody will come to me and go, I know you. Who are you? You look really familiar. So anyway. So when we turned to news and went to Santa Clarita Gazette, things started going pretty well. But I still needed more revenue. I needed more money. And I kept noticing in the other newspaper in town, they would publish these legal notices. You all know what legal notices are, right? The DBAs, foreclosures, everything by law that you have to publish in the newspaper. I said, that's what I need. That will help our ad revenue. So I did everything I was supposed to do. It took me a couple years. I got everything, meet all the laws and everything. And I go to court for my hearing. And the thing was, you had to post your hearing in the closest newspaper to you, right? So I drove to the, I would all see the, what's it called? Track the mileage, and I'm praying. Then I go back to the office and I drive to the Signal. They beat it by a mile. So I had to publish my notice in the Signal that I was going to this court hearing to be able to approve by the court to run these legal notices. I thought, no problem. So I walk in there, I'm all prepared. The judge walks in, present my case, and this guy walks in, like a guy from TV, tall, $100 suit, $200 suit, I don't know. This is as dressed up as I get. And he goes, Your Honor, I'm here representing the Signal, and I'm here to contest the Gazette. Long story short, 3 years, and you might have read about it. There's a lot of legal battle that went on, a lot of back and forth, and it got pretty heated and pretty nasty, and it was very stressful. And finally, one day, and they wanted to have a deposition between us and the Signal. And before one had a deposition, because the law firm was in Riverside, I'd have to drive all the way to Ontario for a 6-7 hour deposition, then come back in rush hour. This time they said, how about doing it at the Signal office? So I gritted my teeth and I said, well, okay, I mean, it's a lot closer. So I went. Long story short, it didn't go that well, and Chuck and I weren't getting along very well then. And we went to lunch, not together. And we came back, and his attorney came in the conference room, called my attorney out to the room. They were out there for a half hour. I'm going, what is going on? And I was going to leave because I had to get back to work. I had to finish the rant. And my lawyer walks in. He says, Chuck would like to talk to you about going into business with the Signal. I go, you got to be freaking kidding me. And I think I said, and I'm ashamed of it now, I hate his guts. I'm not going to go into business with him. But I wasn't. Should I tell that one? When we're sitting in the conference room with the two lawyers, and his lawyer was a real jerk, and he was asking me all these financial questions about my company. Well, Chuck's sitting 3 feet away from me, and I calmly said, well, not so calmly, I am not answering these questions with that man sitting here. And he said, well, he has every right to be here. And I said, I don't give a, and I used bad words and I shouldn't have. I said, I'm not, and I said, I'll just leave. I don't care. And Chuck said something, you know, Doug, this isn't personal. Wrong thing to say. I went over the table. My wife had to grab me. She had to take me outside, and I call it my bad boy timeout. So anyway, but that's not the point of my story. When Chuck came in after the lawyer brought him in that afternoon, and I apologized to him for my immature and foolish behavior, and he said, I'd like to talk to you about this. And I said, well, I'm too emotional right now. How about we come back in the morning? So I came back the next morning, my wife and I, and we sat down with him in the Signal office. I couldn't even believe I was there. I couldn't even believe I was having this conversation. And I said, before I even think about this offer, I got to know what kind of man you are. I said, not business-wise. I want to know what kind of man you are personally. You know, I didn't want to go into business with a jerk, even though at that time I thought he was a huge jerk. And he proceeded, I don't think he minds me telling you this, he proceeded to tell me he had 6 daughters. And at some point he was divorced. He did not have custody, but sometime he realized he needed to have custody for the sake of his kids. He quit his career and raised 6 daughters as a stay-at-home dad. So right away I said, I'm pretty impressed with that. Speed things up. We negotiated for weeks on end. Every day we talked. And the more we talked, the more we got along. We started talking about stuff other than business. So when we made the final offer, next thing you know, we're partners. Now, just so you know, we created an LLC that's separate from the Signal. It's called SCV Publications. So I am partner with Chuck, Russ Briley, and Gary Sproul in that LLC, which is separate from the Signal. Now, the one thing I said to Chuck, I said, I will do this, but you cannot, under any circumstance, interfere with what goes in my newspaper. And he promised that. He said, I will never tell you what you can't put in there or not put in there. And to this day, he has lived up to that. And I know he's been tempted sometimes to tell me, don't do that. But he hasn't. It's turned out to be a very good partnership. And now I've got really 3 really good friends now that, and I don't know how many of you are believers in God, but I'm a huge believer in God. And I tell you that the only way that happened was because of God. Because I've had fantasies about physically harming that man. Even though he could kick my butt, but you know how it is. Anyway, so now it's going really well. And you want to know the future of the Gazette is? All I can tell you is our number one goal, and this may be shallow, is to gain ad revenue. Without advertising revenue, there is no Gazette. Without advertising revenue, there is no Signal. So we do our best to put the most interesting stuff in the paper that we can. And Martha does a great job of coming up with it. And our whole reason is to gain more readers So the people that spend money with us, the businesses that spend money with us, get a return on their investment. And to do that, you have to have a certain number of readers every single week. We just had our outside audit that's done by an outside CPA firm that specializes in auditing publications readership. We just got it back last month, and we have 18,000 readers every single week. Now, I have to tell you, one of the biggest boosts the Gazette ever got was after I partnered with Chuck and the two other gentlemen. He offered to start inserting the Signal, or the Gazette, into the Signal every Friday. And at first I'm going, do I want to be associated with it? But then the more I thought about it, I said, that might be a good idea. It's the best thing I ever did. It really elevated our readership. It helped our ad revenue, and it's going just great. So the future, well, let me back up. I also realized, thanks to Martha, that I couldn't just be a right-wing paper. Because if I had my way, every bit of that paper would be right-wing. I'm a Tea Party guy. I am. I'm Tea Party through and through. And but I need to be fair and balanced, right? So you may see that we have some people that write on the left side and on the right side. So we try to keep it fair and balanced. And I think that appeals to a lot of, in fact, I know it does, because I have lefties that come up to me and say, hey, I really appreciate the fact that one guy just told me the other night at the Michael Hoffman dinner how much he appreciates us publishing the other side. So one thing we would love to do, and Chuck and I have talked about it, but I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the Acorn. It's a newspaper and what they do is they zone their paper. So if we were going to do it here, and Martha's going to love this one, I'll try to give you a raise. We would love to have a Canyon Country edition of the Gazette, a Saugus edition, right? A Newhall edition, a Castaic, but that takes resources and investment. So I know Chuck's trying to arrange, we're going to have a meeting with the publisher of the Acorn and see how he does it and what his staffing requirements are. And so anyway, that's kind of what we're looking to do. But the main thing, if you know any businesses that want 18,000 sets of eyeballs to see their business on a weekly basis, send them my way. That's all I got.
Was there ever a time your rant was taken over with a left side view?
Oh my gosh. I hadn't missed a column in 4 years, and I was finally going to go out of town where I wasn't going to be able to write it. So I turned it over to an editor of mine, and this 19-year-old who works for us. And she was number one in her class at Saugus High just a few years ago. And when I came back and opened up my rant, I was flabbergasted because it was so left. It drove me nuts. Oh, wait, did you guys see the one? When was it? April Fool's Day 2 years ago? They pulled a fast one on me. Because I always edit the paper, look up front. So I go home that night, I come back, and the newspapers come on the truck. It was April 1st. I look at the front page. It's got a picture of me shaking hands with Obama. And he's got a big smile on his face. And the headline was, Doug Sutton decides to run for city council. And then here he is meeting President Obama. I don't know when it was. Anyway, good one.
I just have a comment to make. My name is Ken Dean.
Ken, hi.
And when I ran for city council, actually, I'm going to go another direction. When I got my Signal, I saw the Gazette in it, and I thought, wow, what a great idea. Because probably I've not read it otherwise. And obviously I read it every Friday now. But I did my advertising in the Gazette, basically because Signal was too expensive.
Don't get me in trouble, Ken.
Okay.
And I appreciate it, because once in a while, there'll be a voicemail on my phone on Monday when I get there, and it was Ken leaving me a message over the weekend telling me what he liked about the rant. So thank you, Ken. Oh.
Well, you don't get to sit down yet. Now it's my turn. It's not really a question. People should also know that, much like the two other individuals that he mentioned earlier, Not too recently, I walked into his office with a 12-pack of Bud Light, which is what he drinks, and that's the only reason he said something nice about me the other day.
You're on to me.
I think it is important, and I really want to place an emphasis on this, because there is, when you start mixing publications as we have, and they end up in one inside of another, and there's some joint ownership, there's a lot of confusion that can occur in that. And the one thing that your two local newspapers are attempting to do is to bring community news to the forefront of everything we do, and to make sure that we do our jobs as journalists and hold people in power accountable for their actions on behalf of you. I think Doug has done an excellent job and continues to do even a better job, I believe, over the last number of months of holding people accountable and answering to the communities in which these individuals are to serve. An example today is we read in, it happened to be the Signal, there'll be more written, I'm sure, in the Gazette later this week, and you brought it up here, is that the city is now facing, residents, ratepayers are now facing a significant increase in water rates. There's no coincidence that that didn't get announced until 634 got passed. And 634 is the water bill that allows a merger that takes away from the citizens of this city the opportunity to vote on something critically important. Doug is writing stories about it, we're writing stories about it, and the one thing you can count on is that we're going to continue to do that no matter how we are attacked, and we've been attacked, whether they're personal attacks, which they've been of both Doug and I, because we're committed to this. We're committed to this community. Doug has been here for a long time, and admittedly, I've only arrived recently. But I applaud Doug for the stuff he's doing, and for the fact that he does run an independent paper. I couldn't get him to put anything in it that I wanted. If I begged, I pled, and I certainly couldn't demand. So please understand when he says that he is independent, and he is committed to this community as an independent publisher, that's true. And I, too, am glad that I've met Doug. I, too, believe that it was God's intervention. I, too, believe that I'm very fortunate to be in partnership with him, and I would be remiss if I didn't publicly acknowledge him. So
Thank you, sir.
And you owe me a 12-pack of beer.
I just wanted to make a comment. My name is Michelle Jenkins. I'm on the board at College of the Canyons. Been there a long time.
Hi, Michelle. Yeah.
And I just wanted to tell you that speaking as somebody who happens to not live within the boundaries of the city, where I live was an area that was bisected out of the city by the county before it incorporated. I'd like you all to think about really the idea of regionalizing the paper. I don't see that as a positive. I like being able to read about, in one publication, all of the areas in the community. And so that's
Well, I think we would
key.
still do that also.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be a combination.
Yeah, okay.
I don't mean to take time, but I just have one more thing to say, and that is, I think the idea that you're not letting a sleeping cat sleep, and I think you know what I'm talking about, I think is excellent. To not let something just fade away, or somebody's done something negative, and will not acknowledge it, and keeps putting it under the rug.
Right.
I think it's excellent.
Thank you.